Hi, and good morning, and welcome to Unleashed's webinar on construction process transformation and supply chain collaboration. I'm Chris Rogan, I'm the lead consultant at Unleashed, and I'm joined today by my colleague Chris Gilmore, who's one of our technology consultants. And by the magic of Teams, I'm just going to make Chris live so he can wave to you.
Hi there, good morning everybody. Thank you for joining. Hope you enjoy the webinar.
Unleashed, amongst other specialisms, are a digital transformation consultancy. As such, I hope everyone's found Teams relatively easy to get onto today's live event. It's the first time we've used it, so any feedback would be useful. The controls that you'd normally expect in a Teams meeting are not present, but we've got a Q&A box which is there where you can pose questions to us, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of the session. I think I said no death by PowerPoint, but there may be a few slides in the mix because we have to set the scene before the live demo. Today's event is specifically targeted at the construction industry based on our experiences there, but many of the things that we'll be talking about and discussing are equally applicable to any industry. We'll be showing you one of our vital tools, Kissflow, which we've been using to transform business processes, enable collaboration between clients, contractors, suppliers, and transcending those organizational boundaries. So hopefully by the end of the webinar, you'll see how quick and easy the tools are to enable better collaboration and switch your current business processes from paper, email, Word, Excel, you name it, to fully digital with all the benefits of truly automated, transformed workflow. So prior to joining, you'd have probably seen our invite, and on Eventbrite, we did mention Project 13. And prior to the pandemic, the Institute of Civil Engineers have been working on a new approach for the delivery of key infrastructure projects. The output of this has been dubbed Project 13. And many of the sponsors of the program have been such like the large infrastructure owners in the country, such as utilities, nuclear sites, decommissioning and new build, railways and other transport networks. All of the large infrastructure projects that you'd expect to see across the country, the big brands that you've heard of. These approaches of these reports and new ways of working in the construction industry aren't particularly new. I myself remember the Sir John Egan report, which was entitled Rethinking Construction. That was early on in my career, and this tackled the adversarial cat and mouse game between contractor and client, and where there was that bad style of management where everything was done at arm's length. And that permeated into contracts and everything else. So partnering was the output of the last major report in the industry. And we've moved to things like joint ventures, and it influenced a lot of what I did early in my career and how we marketed the company that I work for. And partnering really became entrenched in all the forms of contract that you're now seeing. They're the ones that you tend to go for. So this is Project 13's taking things a step further, I feel, away from rethinking construction, but still kind of building on it. But you know, the big thing about rethinking construction is we never really got to the point where Tom and Jerry were actually best friends. So like many industries, construction has become much more complex and specialist. If you think about other industries such as medicine, you used to find a thing such as a general surgeon. You know, these were the guys who could do a bit of everything. You know, if you had a broken leg or gallbladder or anything else like that, they could go and do all the different jobs. These days, there's a specialist for everything. Even in IT, there are different specialists that we have for different key specialisms. And it's certainly not the same in construction as it was 20 years ago. There's a lot more safety and quality requirements, traceability of materials, and many new methods of construction. So there are a lot more subcontractors in the mix, there are a lot more specialist companies that you may need to bring into a given project. And of course, the biggest change that you've probably seen since rethinking construction towards Project 13 has been the number of large construction companies that and engineering specialist consultancies who subcontract those specialisms to many smaller businesses. So what's happened is the industry's become a collection of transactional relationships rather than an entire enterprise working on a common endeavour. And to me, this really relates back to what I thought partnering was all about. Its essence, and as you can tell, I'm still very proactive about how this is all done. But the benefit is clear. If you're on board with this way of working, is if you become a successful enterprise, then you're going to be more than the sum of your parts, and the likelihood likelihood is that those teams will get more projects to deliver. And so the term enterprise in context of Project 13 then is not simply just a single large company, but a whole collection of stakeholder companies, suppliers, clients, everybody working together as one on that common endeavor. So Project 13, therefore, is tagged as from transactions to enterprises. And it has 5 key pillars. You've got the capable owner, which may be the government, it may be a utility, airport, nuclear site, and capable obviously referring to having the skills necessary to fulfill that role effectively. To me, I think back to terms like intelligent customer being used in the industry so that they can understand the information that's coming back from other people in the enterprise in this case, and challenge where necessary. And again, that leads you on to governance, which in part of the governance role is to define and manage things, what success looks like. The whole enterprise being rewarded for good performance and good behaviors, and the management of risk and commercial agreements that incentivize for continual investment and continual improvement. And in the center there, we've got integration, and this is where common approaches to things like management systems and a platform for delivery happens. So if you think about many projects, if you've got a lot of different companies involved in the enterprise, we all bring our own management systems and ways of working together. But there needs to be a commonality of a platform, whether that's just quality procedures or safety procedures. There needs to be that commonality that draws everything together and how the interfaces between the different organization in the enterprise works. So that's integration, and it leads you on to organization, which very much becomes part of that. And that's making sure that the enterprise and all the different components of it are effectively structured to deliver the outcomes required. It might involve things like early engagement of suppliers, collaborative teams and such like. And last but not least is digital transformation, the bit that we're very interested in, because it actually permeates right through all of the other pillars in Project 13. And this allows you to have a standardized, integrated approach to everything, and has the ability to give you cost controls and provide all that governance good stuff as well. So you may think that digital transformation is just for us IT nerds, but it's not. And we're going to tell you why it's for everyone and why it's probably more useful than you might first think. So what is digital transformation? As I said at the top, we're, amongst other things, a digital transformation consultancy. However, I'd be lying to you if I said I had a good definition for what that actually is. Or maybe I don't like any of the ones that are actually in existence. And this is the problem with a lot of marketing terminologies that have come up in the tech industry. Many sound great, but what do they actually mean? In recent years, we've talked unified communications, we've talked about cybersecurity. Cyber is actually a term that was around in the 90s and disappeared, and now it's made a comeback because the marketeers and the media types have brought this back. It's become fashionable, and it really just describes what was going on anyway. So what has been going on in IT? Well, the consumerization that's happened over the last 20 years since the noughties has really been what's changed things. We've got more computing power in our pockets. We've got faster and faster broadband. We've got more tech than I could ever have imagined when I started working. So the switch from businesses driving the development of digital technologies to consumers driving that change has now rebounded back to business. So if you think about it, we've got mobile phones, better connectivity with things like tablets around, and all because that consumer demand was so great. I never thought I'd ever have broadband in my pocket almost everywhere. My mobile phone actually gets faster broadband on site than I do at home. So this is part of what transformations are going on, and the products and devices, the connectivity, everything has been accelerating and getting better, with the cost actually coming down as well. So if you strip all that back and look at what digital transformation really is, it's pretty much what IT people have been doing all along. It's to make things more efficient. We always look to remove paper because IT people hate it. We want to increase collaboration and make things more efficient. It's as simple as that. But as a discipline, if you think about IT and computing and where it came from, it actually was there to do really complex calculations that couldn't have really been done by hand. So, we had things like this. This is a slide rule, and this is what happened. This is what was before computing power, and that power now is in everybody's pockets. And it's at the bottom of an organization. It's with the operatives in the field out there. Just, they have it anyway because they have their personal phones. And it's in your customers, it's in your organization, but are you really getting all the information and everything that you need back to make effective decisions? So now the trend is with transformation is to see what we can do with bringing all these different sources of information, different systems, bringing it all together. So in my background, I've probably spent the last 20 years in IT worrying about the T, so the technology, and forgetting about the I, the information. So we now have plenty of tech, it's cheap, but we need to get better at managing the information and using that for better management decisions. So this is the beginning, really. This is how things are starting to change. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be bounded by your organization or the constraints of just thinking in one company. The great thing about Project 13 is thinking in the enterprise, and that is just as much for digital transformation and IT and in management information as it is for any of the other pillars that are there in Project 13. So on to construction then. I think any of us who've spent any time there realize how bad we've been adopting new technology and digitization. There are many reasons for that. And agriculture on this chart, I actually think is probably slightly ahead of construction. If you think about a lot of tractors now have satellite tracking in them, and they can actually automatically go and plow fields and plant seeds. And there is a lot of changes going on, even electronic tags in livestock. It's probably far in advance of construction. Unless you're watching Clarkson's Farm on Amazon Prime, in which case it's probably not so much. But a bit tongue-in-cheek, I actually left a deliberate mistake in this slide. We probably produced this in 2019 for an event that we were doing, and we left 2020 on there. As you can see, it was time for change in 2020. We hoped that there'd be considerable change, and the pandemic has more than done that. I don't think we would have ever probably considered doing this event on Teams to the construction industry originally. I think we would have probably done it in person. And we've all changed the ways that we're working. Probably around 2010, I was laughed out of a room when I suggested that we install a video link between one of our clients' head office and site office, maybe about a 40-mile round trip. And people were doing that possibly twice a day in many cases with company fuel, and laughed out the room, but it doesn't seem so daft now. And this is probably one of the good things that the pandemic has done. It's actually accelerated and hopefully got some acceptance of the change. Although, as they say, you can't necessarily teach a dog new tricks, and I'm starting to see things where presenteeism is coming back. Methods such as email forwarding and making attachments are becoming the norm. They weren't really solutions that we did for the industry very well. We started to say we need to attach this document rather than putting a proper system in place. A lot of the things that we did during the pandemic were just to keep working, and they were sticking plasters. So the barriers to change are very much still there. And as enablers of digital transformation as Unleashed are, we're still learning the lessons and how to deal with the belligerent types and how to take things forward as well. One of the other barriers to IT, to digital transformation, is actually the constraints that the corporate IT environment puts on you. And I don't want to labor this slide too much because I don't want to go into too much techie detail, but when you do an environment sort of analogy, you've got to have a lovely tree. Now, if you think about an enterprise, one company is one tree. If it's an enterprise, you've probably got a forest of these trees, all different companies in one forest. That is your enterprise. And inside each company, there's generally a suite of different systems in there. You've got at the bottom, you've got systems that don't change very much, and towards the end you might change the systems at the end of the scale quite regularly. And just to put some names in there so it actually means something to you. So if you think about your ERP and finance systems, that's brands like Oracle and SAP. HR and CRM systems, things like Workday and Salesforce. If you're a specialist, each company probably has its specialism. So if you're an FM company, you might use something like Maximo. If you're a project management company, you might use something like Primavera P6. shadow IT is actually a relatively new phenomenon. It's something that's come in recent years, and it's generally where people have gone out and tried to solve the problem themselves inside the organization. They don't go back to IT, they use the corporate credit card and go and buy it. And they've bought tools like Slack and Trello where you can simply collaborate with other companies. So thinking back to Project 13, this is a very key point. People have had to go out and solve that problem because the constraints of the corporate systems that don't change very often have caused them an issue. So they've went and paid for it on the credit card and charged it back to the contract that they're working on. And at the end of the scale, we've got productivity software. We've got the Microsoft Office and Google Suites, which we're all used to. And that's what generally changes frequently. And if you think about it, when you're collaborating with other companies, you create your Office documents. They're like kind of in the leaves of the tree. And we kind of hope all that information permeates out of our tree and into the other trees that we're working with. And that's generally how the analogy works. It's probably a bit rough and ready, but hopefully it gets you the point. And I'm now going to hand over to Chris to talk about the opportunity for change.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Now the background's been set, we're going to drill down into how workflow automation can be good for your business. But to understand why digital, let's have a look at some of the problems we have at the moment. Now, the first one we'll see is that everybody's trying to collaborate with Word or Excel documents. But if things are on paper, then you cannot report on it, and therefore you cannot get good data to make those informed business decisions. Manual processes don't easily reach across organizational boundaries. We email a document, we make the changes and email them back again. They still get lost. We don't know where they are and who has the latest version. We may be using an electronic method, but things are still disjointed. We are not digitally transforming anything. We're just kidding ourselves, and we think we are. If we want any of the big IT systems changed to suit the way we work, basically they can't. And if they can, it takes an age and it can become open-ended in terms of internal cost charges from the IT department to the organizational unit. When working on an enterprise, whose IT system do we use? Often when joint ventures are set up, most companies take 3 steps backwards in who becomes in charge of the IT system, whilst everybody tries to avoid it, with almost everyone from any company under the impression that their own IT department is useless. So we end up with problem 5. And all the problems of working are kept in the air. We're throwing these between organizations in the enterprise, trying not to take ownership and responsibility. You can't hit a moving target, so invariably the system fails. And finally, cybersecurity becomes an issue because it's easily used as other big problems as to why you don't do something. Mention GDPR and people turn green. So it's often a barrier to stop anything moving forward. So in the demonstration that we're going to be seeing shortly is a tool that we use regularly in these scenarios called Kissflow, which we think addresses many of these problems. Excuse me. It's a digital transformation and workflow management solution and really good at enabling collaboration between organizations. It uses a philosophy called no code or low code, which means you can make modifications quickly and easily without having to code anything or hire a developer. In fact, it's so easy. If you can use Word or Excel, you'd be able to change a form or a workflow yourself with a bit of training. This will help you streamline processes based on your own knowledge of what you're doing, not a consultant's or waiting for your IT department. It's all secure and cloud-based, so it can bind several different companies and organizations in an enterprise together. And as a very simple interface through a web browser or mobile app. So much so, we have operatives using it on their smartphones, on the crew buses. Just don't tell the unions. So we're actually going to focus on one element of Kissflow today, and that's process. As you can see, there are a few elements to the system. It's a vast product and you get a lot of bang for your buck, but we're really interested in the process model and how this can help you transform your business. However, It has collaboration functions, including inter-organizational chats, project management functions so you can assign tasks and track projects easily, and a case management system used for scenarios where you may want to do something like a help desk where cases are raised, tasks assigned for people to deliver them, and close cases within an SLA period. But before we embark on any form of change, we have to have a reason for change. And now we're going to look at why you should look at change and the benefits to moving towards digital transformation. The first one of these, communication. If we can communicate better internally, externally, we become more profitable and more efficient. Visibility allows us to see what is going on within the organization. If you have a lot of emails flying backwards and forwards between individual users, then those emails are on the desktop PCs or on the laptops, and they're not being seen by people. If someone's on holiday or away or sick, then these emails then get stuck on their systems. With automation, one of the things that we are trying to do is to reduce errors. We're human, everybody makes errors at some point. So by automating, we can reduce the errors. And within the process, what we really want to do, a bit like the email chain, if your process gets stuck somewhere, it creates a bottleneck. With automation, we don't have bottlenecks. Everything runs smoothly, and we have total visibility within the whole system. What we also want to do is try and remove a lot of repetition. If a user is doing repetitive tasks day after day, week after week, they not only become bored, they then start to make errors. And again, automation, we try to reduce this. And finally, clarity. If everybody can see what everybody else is doing and we can see the whole process, then it becomes clear and a lot more concise. Now we want to talk about the how. Well, first we can see a spreadsheet. It's amazing how many organizations still run from spreadsheets. And whilst these are really effective, they don't offer any form of control or automation of processes. By automating, you control timescales. A new process in Kissflow can take as long as 30 minutes, a whole 30 minutes to design, test, and implement. When you add in approvals to your workflow, this vastly reduces your processing time. Also paper. Well, we all know paper is expensive. If you're doing a lot of printing, it has quite expensive costs. Automation reduces these costs. And by the sum of the parts, when we look at all this together in one, then it's estimated that we can reduce each process by around 40%. And for me, that's a huge reason to move. As you'll see when I hand over to Chris, Kissflow can develop the following benefits. Any form or manual process in your organization can be taken and turned into a digital workflow. That's not just the form, but how it's transferred and approved from person to person. This can transcend your organization, and those in a workflow can be your clients, customers, or other people in the enterprise. This becomes the one unifying system for the whole entire enterprise. With all problems traceable and identifiable, if someone hasn't approved or is on holiday, then it can be seen by the process owner. We also see there that there's a cost between £10 and £20 per month, and this is a predictable cost. And finally, we've already mentioned cyber in a couple of the previous slides. Everything's secured and is GDPR compliant. Now I'll hand back over to Chris for the bit you've all been waiting for, and that is the demonstration of Kissflow.
Thanks, Chris. So we now have to sort of kind of pick a bit of an example to use for this live demonstration. So as we said, we tend to work with our clients' existing forms and workflows and transform them. So that generally means we either need something on a piece of paper or an Excel or a Word document. And I've kind of got one here. It is a very antiquated time card that's come from an organization. So I'll bring it up on the screen because you're not going to see it too well there. So essentially, it's from the Cumbrian Co-op, which is an organisation that no longer exists. So I shouldn't get done for copyright. So essentially, this is a timesheet that we see, or a time card we see over and over again. They're all very similar in the industry. It's simply a case of recording a number of hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this as my inspiration for setting up Kissflow. So if I just try and change the content, so we're now onto one big screen. So let me just do that. So hopefully you should see that now. And I'm going to bring up Kissflow. So this is the main Kissflow screen. Don't know why it's not showing me the full. Let me just maximize that. Never mind. Right, so this is our main screen that we've got. So this is my pane of glass that I get in when I try and sign into the system and do anything in there. So if I want to see if I've got any work to do, items assigned to me, or look at the items that I created and where they're at in the workflow, this is where I'd come and look. At the moment, I've got nothing to do because it's a relatively blank system. So I'm just going to start going ahead and creating a new workflow. So as you can see, there are different components to the system. We've got workflows, projects. So if you've got a project scenario where you want to set up and track different tasks and how they're being assigned to different people, there's a project management aspect to the software, and it works on agile project methodologies. We've got data sets, which is essentially little databases we can store in here. We've got lists, which you'll see in the demo. And then we've got integrations, which means we can share data with other organizations. And also in here, we've got a massive library of different forms and workflows. So if you don't have a particular form or workflow, you're stuck for inspiration, you can come in here. We've got attendance, we've got holiday forms, we've got interview forms, we've got goods receipt, we've got purchase orders, purchase requisitions, appraisals, you name it, there's quality forms in here. There is a massive list of things that you could just pick and deploy them straight away. But as I said, 9 times out of 10, here at Unleash, what we do is we tend to create a brand new one. So that's what I'm going to do. And now it's instantly asking me, do I want to create a case, which we've kind of covered before. But if you think about a case, it's kind of one of these things where you start an issue, you track it from opening to closing, and you know, the end user would get a notification that that process has ended and there's something gone on. It would help, you know, IT help desk, building help desk, ticketing, tracking, pipelines, you know, all that type of stuff. But really what we're doing is a bog standard process. So I'm just going to call it time card demo. And I've got my blank canvas. So this is the software's blank canvas where I can build my own form and workflow. And as you can see down the left hand side, we've got lots of different controls and things we can add there. But I'm going to get cracking because I want to do this quick. And I'm just going to create my time card header. And as I showed you before, there's several different fields on that little form that I had from the co-op. And I'm just going to add a text field in for the address. And then I want a job number. And if you think back to the good old days of carbon copy pads, you used to get them printed up with sequence numbers on them, prefix numbers, or some people called them. And I can actually do exactly the same thing here and just call it time card TC no, and then I can put a prefix on there with a little formula, no more complex than Excel, and I can just put that on there, tell the system to generate that when the form starts, and that's done. So the next field would be trade. So there's a bit of a shortcut here, and one of the reasons I've not actually covered any things like making things validation required, but we can do that. But as you can tell, when people describe different trades, they might describe a joiner as a chippy, but we want to make sure that there isn't any free text entered and there's no mistakes. So we can pre-populate the system with different lists, and in a Blue Peter fashion, I've already done that with these 3 items. This list is now available to other flows and workflows in the system, so we can then just simply use that over and over again, and that list's consistent and only updated in one place. And then finally, I kind of want to put in a date field in this for my week ending. I'm just going to fire that in, and then we need a job description. Oops. I'm going to make that a big field, which in here is called a text area. And I've dropped that in, and that gives people a little bit more text than a standard text box to enter in. And I think that's it for that section. So now what I want to do is create a time recording section. I'm doing that with a table. And the first field that I have on my form is a name. I'm actually just going to use our users in that, but we could set up pre-populated lists. So we're just going to use the users that are already active in the system just for a shortcut here for the demo. And then what I need to do is just put in a field of a number value for each day of the week. So I'm just going to quickly do that. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Oops. As you can see, that's already calculated an extra tag on that because I should have called it TH for Thursday. So I'll just change that. And then Friday. So the system is very idiot proof. Even if you do make a mistake, it can sort of preempt what you're doing and make that change for you. So there's no conflicts in field naming. So, oops. And then just create Sunday. So I'll just call that SU and okay that. Make a quick sanity check that I've made them all number fields because I'll need to do the next bit. So unlike your piece of paper, when it comes to total hours, I can actually add this up, and it's just a case of creating another number field and then making that a computed field. So if you think about it, all it is Monday plus Tuesday. I might need to press enter on these. Tuesday plus Wednesday plus TH for Thursday plus Friday plus Saturday plus Sunday. And that's us. That's created my total field. I then might want to add in a currency field for a unit cost. So each labor has a different cost, but what we could do is we could create a database of all the different cost rates, so there's no errors on this. But again, this is a very simple form that we're doing. So I'm just setting the currency as British pound. And then what I probably want finally is another cost just for cost. And then again, that's another currency. We want to switch that out into British pounds. And then we want to say that's calculated. So all that is the total hours times the unit cost. So the formulas are no more difficult than Excel in the slightest. So we could take that much further. We can create totals for each day, and we can do a lot more with it. But from simplicity's sake, we'll just do that for the demo. And the next step to look at is, well, I want to get that approved. So part of what Kissflow can do, we can do different branches and workflows in here, and we can go quite complicated with it. I'm actually going to make it very simple for this. I'm just going to do one new step, and it's going to be manager approval, just to show you that it actually works. And then I'm just going to put myself, which is bad practice. We could do different ways of selecting this, different formulas. A lot of logic could go in here, but I'm going to make it quite simple. And as you can see, when I've added a new step, I can actually hide things. So say as if you had something that was going off to payroll and you wanted to hide unit cost fields from people, and before it even got to payroll, we can hide it from different parts of the business, and we can also configure actions, things that they can and can't do through that. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually just going to do a quick preview just to make sure I'm happy with everything. And yeah, it's all looking good. And one of the other previews I can actually do is, because Kissflow can actually resize itself into different screen sizes, it actually plays pretty well with mobile phones. You can see it's the same software, it's just now reduced itself to a single column, and you can actually do your timesheets here. You can add in your rows and add in your employees in there and select them. And we're actually finding that people are actually quite enjoying this. They do a lot of their work on their mobile phones, especially in the construction industry. So if I just go back to editing, because I'm happy with that, and then I'm going to publish it. So that is it now. I can pretty much now submit a timesheet. So it's done. I'm going to put in my data. It hasn't created the job number yet because I've not hit submit, but I can now pick one of my trades. I'm going to pick Saturday's my weekending day, and then put fixed door as my job. And then I'm going to just pick myself as the person whose time it is. I'm just going to add numbers in these fields. It's totaled them up. Unit cost in, cheap at twice the price, and then all I need to do is hit submit. And that is now going through the system, and it's now awaiting approval by the manager. So in this case, I've made myself the manager. So you can see the step name. My items has gone up to 1. So this is now assigned to me because I have a job to do. I created one that's still in progress because that's one of the forms that I created. And you can see these numbers have gone up. And I can also now just go in there and I can decide what I'm going to do with it. We could have given the manager rights to edit things if we wanted to, but the manager's got rights to send back in case that he didn't agree with something. He can put comments on there, why he's doing it. He can put attachments and smileys on there if he likes. You can reassign or just simply reject. But in this case, I'm just going to hit submit. And that's it. It's as simple as that. That's, you know, we could go into a lot more detail of the metrics and everything. There are a number of reports that you can have in there. We've got the metrics, so you can actually see where things are being held up in the workflow. You can see I proved that incredibly quickly, but you can also see which people are approving things, and you can actually get an alert for where people are on, you know, if they're on holiday or anything. And just in the background, when I had that job to do, I also got an email to remind me to do it as well. So we've got that on top of that. So I'm just going to return us back to the demo to the slides. 1 second, and bring Chris back in. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Hopefully that's given you a better understanding and a better feel for Kissflow and what Kissflow can do for you. This has been sort of aimed at the construction industry, but as you can see from the slide, there are quite a few other companies that are using Kissflow as well. Yes, in construction, we have in there the One Aim, which is a joint venture on Sellafield between Jacobs and Mighty. We're lucky enough to have a few of those people on the call today, so thank you guys for taking the time out of your busy schedules. But so many other companies on there that you might not be familiar with. World of Vision, well, they're a UK children's charity that's doing some fantastic work. Reeds.co.uk are the recruitment people that you may have used or may have seen. Olympus, you will know from the digital cameras. Davenport University are a private university in Michigan in the US, and the Carnegie Foundation is a teaching organization, also US based. I haven't mentioned the Telegraph or Rentokil because I'm sure you're familiar with both of those names. Now I want to come on, this is a change management process, and when you start putting Kissflow in, you will have to think about this, you'll have to plan it, you'll have to manage it. But this is where Unleash comes in. And we have a very set process to make things easy for us and make things easy for you as the customer. But one thing I would like to point out is that we make the system to mirror the way you work and not make you change the way you work to suit the IT system, as so many things always happen that way with IT. What we like to do is we have the steps we go through, we discuss, we analyze, we build, audit, implement, and then we reevaluate the whole process again. And as Kissflow is an ever evolving model, this will be a constant change and a constant talking between the two of us, between yourself as a customer and us as the partner in question for Kissflow. So now a little bit, just very, very briefly about what Unleash do. You may or may not know us. We are predominantly digital transformation and cybersecurity consultants. Everything we do has a cybersecurity base, so we make sure everything is secure that we put it. We'll also plan, manage and design specific industry solutions based on what you want to do as a business. And as you would imagine, we are an IT company, so our background and our base is in IT and managed service. And really that's about it from us today. So I would like to thank you all for taking time out your busy schedules to come along. If you want to make contact with us, our contact details are on the screen. We will be sending out the slides and the presentation to you to have a look at your leisure. And hopefully we may hear from you in the future. I think, Chris, there's a couple of questions that have come through. One of them is a good one for you. Chris, what's the minimum number of users that we can put into the system?
Well, Kissflow is quite scalable, but due to the time taken to set up the account, the sort of smallest account we get is about 30 users. It could go smaller, but we'd recommend that 30 is kind of where you would like to start, because that's when certain tools like emails and things start becoming a bit more cumbersome, and you might want to then start going into a more formally recorded system. So we'd recommend around 30, but it is possible to work on any size company, really.
Okay, that sounds good. And I see one coming through on cost. We mentioned £10 to £20. What does that actually mean, and what do we get for it?
The Kissflow suite is actually quite extendable, so you don't have to buy all the different modules together. So you could buy just the case management and the process management, or you could buy the project management, or you could buy the communication side of things and the chat. So there's very different modules you could buy with it, which means that the cost scales. But essentially, as you mentioned already, that the Unleashed as a company, we do consultancy, but we also do managed services. So different companies, they may want a lot of help from us. They might actually want us to do it for them. Might want us to look after the platform, keep onboarding users and do the changes, adds, removes, and maintain that for them. They might want us to keep adding new forms and processes in the system. So this all comes with difference in cost. So the platform itself is extensible and modular, and then the amount of help that you ask from us can vary in a case-by-case basis. We're also quite amenable to training everybody up inside your organization to do what we do, and you just look after it yourself. So it is kind of tailor-made to fit your organization, and we use that £10 to £20 budget just to give everyone a feel of what is possible and where it's going to be. That tends to be what our customers end up paying.
Okay, fantastic. Another one just coming in here as well. Is there a minimum term? Do companies have to sign up for any particular length?
No, and that's a great question, because it leads on to another important point about the system. One of the things with the big IT systems that I showed in the environmental tree example is that it becomes very costly to change different systems, and so you've got if you've spent a lot of money, you tend to feel tied to that system. Now, the great thing about what's happened with the consumerization of IT, everyone's got very used to paying for as a service. So if you think of your Netflix, your Amazon Prime, we're paying mostly on monthly basis for things like that, and Spotify, and that's exactly what Kissflow does. So there's no long-term commitment, and there's no reason to keep it. The whole thing is for us, and Kissflow it's got to work. So the incentivization for us is to come in and do a good job and keep you working with us, and we hope you like the experience. But ultimately, if it doesn't work, you're quite within your right to get rid of it within a month's notice, and it's as simple as that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that. I don't really see any other questions coming in at the moment. So we'd just like to thank you all for joining us today, and hope you find it an informative session. And
thanks, everyone.
Soon. Thank you.
Cheers.